A while back, I made a video celebrating my first 1,000 subscribers, and I asked you guys what you'd like to see for a 1,000 subscriber special. The comment that got the most votes would be the video I do, and this is what I chose. A very interesting topic indeed. Throughout the course of my life, I've played a lot of video games, some of which I never want to play ever again, but I've also played a ton of good ones. So many good ones, in fact, that this was the hardest list I've ever put together. It was almost impossible to narrow this down to just 10 games, and the ones that did make it on this list were constantly moved around, because I really had to think about things such as, does this game still hold up as well as it did when I was a kid, or which game did I have more fun with? And if that's not enough, this list is bound to change, because there are so many phenomenal games that I haven't played, haven't finished, or they just haven't come out yet. But for now, these are my 10 favorites. Hope you like the list, guys. Alright, you see what I mean? See how hard it is to keep to my word? Okay, before the top 10 officially begins, I need to give out some honorable mentions here, because it's gonna kill me if I don't. These games are well worth your time. Rayman Origins takes the wackiness of Mario Bros. Wii's multiplayer and mixes it with the difficulty and level design of Donkey Kong Country and makes it into an awesome experience. Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back has a lot of variety, a lot of secrets, and is one of the most hardcore games I've ever played. And I can see why Chrono Trigger and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time get the praise they do. Yes, I finally got around to playing Ocarina of Time. I just haven't finished either of these two games yet. If I did, they may have been on the top 10. So now, without further ado, I present to you my top 10 favorite games of all time. Enjoy, everybody! The very first game I ever got for my PlayStation 2 was a little title known as Ratchet Clank, an action-adventure game filled with humor, awesome visuals, and man was there ever a ton of stuff to blow up. One of the best games on the system at the time. Then the sequel came along and did everything better. Upgradable weapons, immersive environments, and it made Ratchet a lot more likable and less of a jerk to Clank. I honestly didn't think that the games could get any better than this. But alas, there was another. Christmas 2004 was when I got Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal. Has it really been 9 years already? Holy crap. What really made the third installment stand out as the best of the original trilogy to me was how it took various elements from the first two games and successfully combined them with all new elements to make something truly spectacular. The game took the upgradable weapon system from going commando, and it also took place in the same galaxy from the first game, where we saw familiar faces, as well as some new ones, which gave off this awesome feeling of wonderment mixed with nostalgia. One of the things I love about the Ratchet & Clank franchise is its sense of humor, and Up Your Arsenal has some of the funniest cutscenes I've ever seen in a video game. If I were to go over every line of dialogue and cutscene that made me laugh, we'd be here for days. But let me just say that these cutscenes are the main reason I'd play through this game multiple times, cause some things, you just gotta see twice. And of course, it wouldn't be a Ratchet & Clank game without the insane amount of weapons at your disposal, and boy does this game deliver! There's a variety of weapons to choose from, and no two guns play exactly the same, and in turn, this makes things like boss fights more interesting. Do you want to just mindlessly blow this guy to bits, or do you want to use a little bit of strategy? It's really up to you. You have the freedom to play how you wish. And that's what I like about this game. It gives me a sense of freedom. Throw in a couple of extra game modes, a multiplayer, some very memorable villains, and you've got yourself a contender for one of the best games of all time. You know I've made one hell of a list when a game like this barely makes it on. What else do I have in store? Well, stick around, find out. Right now, this part's done. When it comes to making platformers, nobody makes them quite like Nintendo. They just have a knack for said genre, and some of their best works feature the most recognizable face in gaming, Mario. His adventures in the third dimension are truly something to behold. But which one of those games is my favorite? That would have to be Super Mario Galaxy 2. This game had a lot of expectations to live up to. I mean, its predecessor was the spectacular Super Mario Galaxy, and just how do you make a sequel that can top this? Simple. You just do. Now, no game is perfect, but Super Mario Galaxy 2 is as close to perfect as it gets. I can't seem to find a single flaw with this game, because I don't think there are any, and if there are, I don't want to look for one. That'd make the game look bad. Every aspect that this game has to offer is of a quality that all games should strive for. Colorful, stylized visuals, wonderful music that gives off a very strong emotional feel, and gameplay that's quite literally out of this world. Sorry, I saw an opportunity and I had to take it, okay? The level design is simply fantastic, with some of the most creative ideas I've ever seen in a Mario game, with things like incorporating 2D elements into the 3D environment, using all new power-ups to your advantage, and each galaxy is different from one another, so never once did this game feel like it was getting repetitive to me. And we can't forget the biggest addition to the gameplay, Yoshi, can we? I mean, him alone makes the first game green with envy. That's right, I just went for 2, folks, I just went for 2! Mario Galaxy 2 has a good dose of nostalgia as well, the kind of nostalgia that can really get to you. You cannot say with an honest heart that when you got to the Throwback Galaxy and heard that familiar tune, you did not lose yourself immediately. Oh, that still gives me tingles. Mario, your home console games just seem to get better and better, and I hope your next 3D installment is just as good as, if not better, than the magnum opus that is Super Mario Galaxy 2. But just what would it be called? Would it be Super Mario Universe? I'm gonna go sit in the corner now. In most video game franchises, no matter how good the franchise is as a whole, it'll usually have at least one title that wasn't well received, unless that IP is really unlucky. But with the Mario RPG series, there has not been a bad game made as of yet in my opinion. But unfortunately, that made things difficult for me, as I had a hard time choosing which game to put on here. Ultimately, number 8 is a tie between Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door and the original Super Mario RPG: Legend of the Seven Stars. So why do these games tie for number 8? Because they both manage to give you a true sense of fun and adventure, but each of these games have so many different things to offer. For example, The Thousand-Year Door has a lot of variety, so many different badges to get, a ton of items you can use, and a bunch of characters that you can add to your team give you so many ways to play the game. Not to mention, there's a lot of side quests you can do. Now, I first played Legend of the Seven Stars last year, and I can see why everybody considers this to be such a masterpiece. While it's not as expansive as the Thousand-Year Door, there's just a certain charm to it that is yet to be replicated to this day. Maybe it had something to do with the visual style, maybe it was the music, maybe it was the 3D vibe I got from it. But whatever it was, no Mario RPG has managed to make me feel the way I feel when I play this one. The feeling feels tingly. Like, if you're listening to this with headphones right now, this is what Mario RPG feels like. But both games have an innovative battle system, memorable locations, and lovable characters that should have been in more games, but were never heard from again. So, just why is this the norm when it comes to Mario RPGs? Do the developers think that we won't care? I certainly care. These characters are what makes the game so great in the first place. Gino for Smash 4. Yup, you knew a Rareware game would make it on this list eventually. These guys made so many great games, and one of their best is none other than Chris Seaver's controversial concoction of crazy, known as Conkers Bad Fur Day. Some say this game's overrated. I say, hey, shut your mouth. It's a good game. There's really nothing quite like Bad Fur Day, is there? This game takes everything generic about 3D platformers and mixes things up to create a very unique experience. And playing this the first time through, I had no idea where this game was gonna go. I mean, you start out simple enough. You're in a beautiful overworld filled with flowers and sunshine, then halfway through the game I'm in a nightclub full of rock people run by a weasel in Dinosaur Land? Non-linear storytelling at its oddest, I'll tell you that much. Along with straying away from the conventional stuff, what I love about this game is Conker himself, because he's one of the most relatable quote-unquote protagonists I've ever got to control. He's no villain, but he's certainly no hero either, and I think we've all been in his shoes at least once in our lives. You're tired and confused and you just want to go home to your bed, but you're constantly distracted by a bunch of pestiferous jerks who want you to solve their problems, while you're too busy looking out for number 1. Then you battle the singing mound of number 2. Yup, we've all been there. And even though the single player is rather short, I always come back to this game. Not just for the main game, but also for its multiplayer. This is my GoldenEye right here. With the right kinds of people, the multiplayer can keep you entertained for hours on end. And I'm not gonna lie, this is probably the closest I'll get to playing an FPS and thoroughly enjoying it. To wrap this up, Conkers Bad Fur Day is just one of those games that you have to play at least once in your life. And even though Bad Fur Day never got the sequel it deserved, I'm still glad we got this raunchy gem of a game. It's marvelous. The Sly Cooper franchise is a prime example of a series that has never had a bad game in my opinion. Each title in the original trilogy stands on its own, even the first one with its stupid one-hit you're dead mechanic. Hate that, by the way. The game's also managed to tell an amazing story, and the ending, while bittersweet, was satisfying nonetheless. But I wanted to see more from the Sly franchise, and years later, to my surprise, a fourth installment was announced, and I was excited, but also a bit worried, because a fourth installment can go one of two ways. It can either become the best title in the series, or it can fall flat on its face and give the franchise something to look down upon. Fortunately, Thieves in Time is not the one where the dinosaur fell down. And not only did this game live up to my expectations, but they outright exceeded them. The Cooper gang still retains their charming chemistry, the voice acting is better than ever, the music is a lot more memorable this time around, and the graphics... Oh, I'm not the one that prefers graphics over gameplay, but it's just so nice to see what Sly looks like on a next-gen console. Everything just seems to pop off the screen. The game plays exactly how a Sly game should, and even though it doesn't do anything innovative, that doesn't make the game bad by any stretch of the imagination. If anything, it reminded me why I love Sly in the first place. After nearly 8 years, it feels so good again to be picking guards' pockets and jumping on spires. That never gets old. In my opinion, this is also the most immersive Sly game. When you combine the beautiful visuals and animation with the voice acting from well-known actors in the industry, you really feel like you're playing through a classic cartoon. The only things that break this immersion are the infrequent but annoyingly long loading screens. Last time I checked, this was not the PS1. Well, aside from that, Thieves in Time is an excellent game, and if you're a hardcore Sly fan who's been wishing for more Sly, trust me, you're in for one hell of a ride. Oh, Banjo Kazooie, how I do love thee. You know, I'm starting to think I talk way too much about this game, but there's a reason why. I just love it so much that I have a hard time not talking about it. I think I love this game almost as much as, if not more than, this guy over here, but here's the thing. He grew up on this game. I didn't, and yet I still feel like I got the same experience as him, and many of you did when you first played this as kids. So, what can I say about Banjo Kazooie that hasn't already been said? Well, nothing really comes to mind, but I can at least make what you've heard before sound interesting. The game's difficulty was just right, and not only were the worlds the perfect size, but they each had musical tracks that fit the atmospheres and really made this virtual experience come to life. But what I really liked about this game is the childlike wonder it bestowed upon me, with its witty dialogue, memorable characters, and even how you get certain jiggies. Like here, you think you might have to do something complicated to get the jiggy out of his stomach, but no! All you gotta do is tiptoe real quietly across the floor, and it's fun, it's something a kid would do. And the villain, man, Grunty really steals the show. Throughout the game, you could always feel her presence, and while I despised her, I also really liked her, because I felt like I got to know her. It may have taken me a long time, but I'm so glad I lifted the rock I was living under and got to play this masterful game. Kudos, Rare. Kudos. Let's go back to the year 2010, where I watched my very first E3 conference online. Throughout Nintendo's conference, I was excited for all the upcoming Wii games, but there was one announcement that was so big, so unexpected. When I heard the music to the trailer, I began to freak out. Then the trailer began, to which I began cheering uncontrollably. For the next 5 months, I waited anxiously to get my hands on Donkey Kong Country Returns, and on the day of its release, I bought the game, brought it back home, popped that sucker in, and let me tell ya, I haven't had that much fun with a 2D platformer in a very long time. So, why is DKCR my favorite entry in the DK franchise? Well, after Rare's departure with Nintendo, the DK franchise took a bit of a backseat, and the games released during that dark era were gimmicky spin-offs and a poorly received racer, none of which to my knowledge sold all that well. I was beginning to think Nintendo didn't really care about DK that much, and only Rare would be able to direct the franchise back in the right direction. But Retro proved to me that you don't need that has-been of a company to make a good DK game, you just need a studio that knows what they're doing, and Retro did nearly everything right with this title. Like with Up Your Arsenal, Donkey Kong Country Returns is a wonderful mix of old and new. It has many nostalgic elements from the original trilogy, while adding a bunch of new ideas to make it feel fresh and not just a rehash, and in my opinion, this makes the game an instant classic. You know when people talk about classic games and how some of the best levels had memorable gimmicks? Yeah, Returns is full of those, with levels like the one with the tidal waves, the sunset levels, the one with the bats, the one with the whale and the aquatic ambience remix. That one really got to me. If you're a fan of platformers, don't pass this game up. This is one of my favorite Wii games, hands down, and I really hope that Retro makes a sequel to this awesome game. one of the best games the Super Nintendo has to offer. Yoshi's Island is as adorable as it is hardcore. And while Super Mario World is a very good game, this sequel, prequel, in my opinion, manages to do everything better than its predecessor? I confused myself. Bright, uplifting graphics, silky smooth gameplay, and an unbelievable replay value for a Super Nintendo game. It's just... Man, this game's like really good. It's what I would call the perfect platformer. But instead of going into explicit detail about this game's flawlessness, I'm gonna switch things up a bit and share some of my personal experiences with Yoshi's Island with you guys. In a very unprofessional manner. Let the gushing begin. Dude, wasn't it so annoying when you lost Mario and then he started crying and wouldn't shut his mouth and you're like, oh, how long am I stuck with this defenseless little burden? But then he proves his worth when he gets a star and you're like, oh, I'm sorry I ever doubted you, man. Oh man, weren't those monkeys from World 3 like the biggest jerks ever? You see him the first time and you're like, oh, cute little monkey, he's eating the seeds. Wait, you spin out, oh crap, oh, now look what you've done. Didn't the bosses have so much variety to them, like the frog, like he ate you and then you had to beat him up from the inside to get out? Or Raphael the Raven, he's like, you didn't fight him in a box room, you fought him like in orbit, and then when you kill him, he doesn't like explode, he goes out into orbit and becomes a constellation, and it's like, oh, that's cool. Wasn't World 6 like the creepiest thing ever when you were a kid? I mean, you could like feel Bowser's presence within every level, and when you got to Bowser and you beat him real easy, you thought, oh, that was easy, it only took 3 hits, this game's over. Wait, what are you doing? What? The playroom's gone, but where's Bowser? Oh, there he is. Oh, gee! How is this guy falling down on me? What am I gonna do? Oh, he's getting closer! He's getting closer! What am I gonna do? Hey! I did it! I did it! I can't believe it! That was awesome! And that's why I love Yoshi's Island. Don't tell me you guys thought I forgot about this franchise. How could I? I've loved the Pokemon franchise since the beginning, starting with the anime and eventually making my way to the games. I've managed to have so much fun with each title in the main series, from Red and Blue to Black and White 2, and I think that the Gen 5 games are the best the franchise has to offer when it comes to pretty much everything. Does that make them my favorite? Not even close. My favorite Pokemon game, as well as the first one I ever played, is none other than Pokemon Silver. Over a decade ago, a good friend of mine gave me this game, shortly before he moved continents and I never saw him again. So not only do I cherish this game, I also cherish my specific cartridge. But I didn't play this game on the Game Boy, because I didn't have one at the time. I did have a Super Game Boy, however, so I got to experience this masterpiece for the first time on the big screen. And just why is this game a masterpiece? Well, like the other games, it has a unique battle system, so many different creatures to catch, train, and customize to your liking, and it might just be me, but playing through Silver the very first time, my sense of immersion had never been higher for a video game. I had always wanted to be a Pokemon trainer when I was little, but since, real animals are a thing, this is how I lived out my dream. I played this game non-stop, and when I wasn't playing Silver, it was all I could think of doing. Alright, school's out, gotta run home as fast as I can so I can get to playing Silver. Oh, it's Friday? Sweet! A whole weekend of Silver! Going back to Silver's immersiveness, I actually felt like I was in the Pokemon world, and no matter what I was doing, I took nearly everything to heart. I listened to Professor Elm's advice like he was a real teacher. I truly cared for my Pokemon and hated how my rival thought they were just tools. I was flabbergasted when I first saw Red Gyarados, and disappointed when I accidentally killed it. I would not go to bed until I thwarted Team Rocket's plans for good, and every single gym leader and Elite Four member got me into a fit of genuine rage every time I lost to them, especially Whitney. But my victories against them felt all the sweeter, especially against Whitney. And upon defeating Lance and entering the Hall of Fame, I was overjoyed, but kinda sad, thinking my adventure was over. Until I found out you could visit Kanto, which nearly blew my mind back then. How many games do you know of that double in size when you think you've done everything there is to do? And so, my Kanto quest began. I caught tons of Pokemon, got a bunch more badges, and got to fight Red, who I thought was Ash Ketchum at the time. I mean, I already fought Brock, Misty, and Blue, who I thought was Gary at the time, so I thought this final battle was really cool. However, even though my victory over Red Ash marked the end of the story, my adventures with Silver would continue until the day my game lost its ability to save, and eventually reset itself. That is the only time I had ever cried on the outside over the loss of a game. Silver has given me so much joy throughout the past decade. I still remember my very first team of 6, the time I caught a shiny Zubat and Slowpoke in the same file, and managing to catch a badly poisoned Ho-Oh in red health with a Great Ball without saving prior. Does that make up for the Gyarados thing? I think it does. And even though Gold and Silver's remakes are amazing, the original will always be my favorite. If my friend who gave me this game is watching, which you should because I sent this to you, thank you. Rest in peace, Silver. You were awesome. Now I know I can just replace the battery, but that would ruin the drama now, wouldn't it? Well, we're finally at number 1, and from the entries on my list, you can tell that I'm a huge fan of Nintendo. Number 1 is a Nintendo game. But what do I think is better than Mario, Donkey Kong, Yoshi, and even Pokemon? How about a series of games that brings all of those franchises and more together into a no-holds-barred, star-studded slam fest that is only known as... If Smash Brothers is not one of the greatest decisions ever made in the world, let alone the gaming industry, then I don't know what is. This is every gamer's dream come true, and I love all 3 games with a passion. And as much as it hurt me to do this, I decided to only choose one as my all-time favorite. And the one I chose was... Super Smash Bros. Melee is the first Smash I ever played, the one that had the biggest impact on me, as well as being the most entertaining game I've ever had the pleasure of playing. So, like with Yoshis Island, prepare for some gushing, although it's gonna be a lot more professional. When it comes to pretty much everything, Melee delivers. Oh, there we go, see? Ranging from the dynamic soundtrack to the easy to learn yet hard to master gameplay, and if you're looking for a game with an amazing replay value, you're not gonna find a better game than this. I've devoted countless hours into this game that I could have spent going outside. So many, in fact, the game actually did tell me to go outside. But can you really blame me? There's so much stuff to do in this game, you're gonna be busy for months, maybe even years before you've done everything. I'm still trying to get that Mew trophy by beating All-Star mode on the hardest difficulty. But would you believe me when I say I beat this challenge with Jigglypuff? And she's the only character I've managed to beat this event with to this day? I take back nearly everything I ever said about this puffball. While I've spent an unprecedented amount of time in the single-player mode, multiplayer is what this game's all about. And whether you use items or not, every match has the potential to become a frenzy. Me, myself, I'm fine with using items, but I'm no stranger when it comes to fighting at a competitive level. And I don't want to brag, but I think me and my brother are pretty dang good at this game. Don't believe me? See for yourself. I mean, seriously, guys, I think I could give Kevin Hoang a run for his money. Now, you know as well as I do, when you get right down to it, the most important aspect of a game is its fun factor. And while Melee has its flaws, I forgive it for giving me the most amount of pure fun. First time I played this at a friend's house, I did not want that day to end. And to this day, my level of fun with Melee is always high. Even though I always have fun revisiting the other games on this countdown, every experience with Melee is different from the last. Maybe someday there will come a game that I will find much more enjoyable, but it's gonna have to be something more legendary, more revolutionary, and more fun than my favorite game of all time.
Super Smash Brothers Melee!
Hey, thanks for watching my video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did making it. If you want, you can like this, you can favorite this, you can share this, you could subscribe to me if you want to know when I'm making more videos. Just whatever you want to do, whatever. But rest assured that I'll be back with another video. Just not right now, because I'm tired. I'm going to sleep.